What's going on, Hokie Nation? Virginia Tech football is back in the win column, coming off the heels of a 31-14 win over Marshall in Lane Stadium on Saturday. We got a little bit of a mix-up in the football crew, and we're talking all things Hokie football. It's episode 373 of the Tech Sideline podcast, and it starts right now. We're coming at you on a Monday, September 9th, 2024, from our high-tech studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, refer the show to a friend, and head over to techsideline.com to check out our extensive editorial content. Subscriptions are just $12 a month for loads of all of our content, and for Virginia Tech students, your subscription is free. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, but the TSL podcast is also brought to you by StubHub. We got a new sponsor. Need tickets for the game? StubHub's got them. Check out the link in our YouTube description to look for Hokie football tickets, and be sure to check out our football schedules on techsideline.com. We got you all set up. We got all the links to every individual game, home and away, and we make it easy for you to find tickets via StubHub. I'm your host, as always, Giovanni Heater. To my right, whoa, that's not Chris Coleman. That's of course our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter, getting ready to redshirt here.
I've been told to point to the redshirt sign at least 5 times today. So
we'll continue to hit that button, ring that bell all day long.
I'm playing Chris's obnoxious know-it-all role today, as one YouTube commenter put it last week. So I even have a blue shirt in honor of that. So ready to roll here.
There we go. Across the way, of course, our managing editor, David Cunningham. In the fourth chair, we bring Carter Hill, Clark, as we call him. That's his official title here at Tech Sideline. He's hanging out in the fourth chair today, producing the show behind the scenes, the mustache man, as always, pushing the buttons, Mr. Nick Brown. All right, guys. Well, Blacksburg was buzzing. Everything was back this weekend. Hokie football was back. I'll tell you what, not that I didn't expect it, but for coming off the heels of a loss, I know it was advertised as a sellout, but Lane was rocking. It was a fun atmosphere on Saturday.
It was like perfect day for football.
Oh, yeah.
Too. Like not really too hot, slight breeze, kept a little cool, but perfect sunny day. Field looked great. I thought the fans were out in full force. No, it was a great day for football.
Yeah, I think a typical Blacksburg football weekend. It was interesting to see the new chairbacks in Lane Stadium. I saw a lot of complaints.
Not comfortable, apparently, what people are saying. I got to go in there and sit in them for test runs.
Yeah, there were a lot of people on the boards and on Twitter saying they weren't very comfortable, but a little bit of a new look for Lane Stadium, some new things added. The student section looks different, but when you hear the Enter Sandman for the first time, it's kind of exciting. And I thought, like Andy said, great football weekend just in general. In terms of weather, you couldn't ask for a better start.
It was perfect. There was literally not a cloud in the sky, and it was that perfect football chill where once the field was covered in shadow, which happened probably towards the end of the first quarter, I went from normal to actually pretty cold and had to go get a quarter zip, which is ideal. You want to have the quarter zip and khakis rolling on a game day. So I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, sometimes those September games, it can be like really hot. Like you're sweating up a storm out there. So no, I thought it was really in like pre-fall weather. Like almost felt like it was fall. Not quite there yet, but perfect weather.
How about the flyover? That was pretty awesome. We saw him almost rehearsing it throughout Blacksburg. Carter and I driving to the ballpark to go do Red Sox baseball. Saw them circling around and practicing before heading back to Roanoke where they depart from. But the C-17, perfectly timed. I mean, it was just like, whoa, okay, we're back. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, the C-17, they did the flyover for the Pitt game last year, but it was a night game, and FAA regulations say they have to do it before essentially dusk. So they had to do it like an hour before the game last year, if you remember that. The problem being in the press box is you don't really get a good vantage point, but I got to see it enough flying around on Friday afternoon doing circles over Blacksburg. Ivan and John, our photographers, got some great photos of the flyover. So, yeah, really, really cool.
Last thing I wanted to touch on before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of this ball game. I thought the CW network did a really nice job. Going back and watching the condensed game, we were all there, of course, but going back watching the condensed game, I thought Tom Brenneman sounded great. Their broadcast crew is great. They had this unique, they had an umpire view where they had a camera on the refs.
Was pretty cool. I saw some of that. I didn't see too much of the broadcast. I mean, I have it on my laptop during the game, but I can't hear anything going on with that. But I thought the ump cam, is that a CW thing? I thought I saw it on some other games as well this weekend.
I think ESPN has it, but I've never seen it on like an ACC network broadcast, for instance. Not that it's not there, but it stood out. I just thought CW did a great job.
They had a chopper flying over the stadium too during the whole game, which was cool to see.
Yes.
The CW chopper came out.
I know.
It's nice.
Crazy. They pulled out all the stops, and I thought they did a really nice job covering the game. All right, well, Virginia Tech takes down Marshall 31-14 in front of a legit $65,000 person crowd on Saturday. Hokies generated 338 yards of total offense to Marshall's 278, and Tech threw for 130, running for 208 on the ground to Marshall's 131 through the air and 147 on the ground. Kyron Drones, he went 14 for 21 for 130 yards and a touchdown through the air. Teuton's 22 rushes for 120 yards and a touchdown. That marked his 5th 100-yard rushing game as a Hokie and his 15th in his career. Let's talk about this offense a little bit here, Andy. And I think it starts with what's up with the slow starts. That's kind of the narrative, it seems, for this team through 2 weeks. Again, against Vanderbilt, you trailed 17-0. Virginia Tech did not score an offensive point until there was 6:22 left in the second quarter. It was a John Love 42-yard field goal, and then didn't score a touchdown until the 8:02 mark of the third quarter with Teuton's touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before. And they had a slow start at Vanderbilt. The difference this week was the defense showed up in the first half, and they also got that punt return from Jalen Lane to start the scoring there. It's I say every week, you can't worry about style points, and a win's a win. We're going to talk about style points here because you did not see an offense that came out hitting all cylinders right off the bat. I mean, that's the concerning part. I don't think Marshall had a great defense. They were able to get a lot of pressure on Drones, sort of bottled up the running game for the most part in the first half. I know Teuton broke off a couple runs, but Tech was not able to run it consistently. So, that's concerning because the schedule ramps up here. I know they have at ODU this week. Strange things happen in Norfolk, but then, Rutgers, legit defense, Miami, maybe the best team in the ACC, the way they've been playing so far. I think you've got to get this offense rolling to feel better about Tech's chances in some of these games, and you can't play 30 minutes of football. I mean, that's just a truism of the sport. You can't play half the game and expect to win.
Sure.
Not counting the drive that took Tech into halftime in the locker room. Hokies had 8 first-half drives. 6 of those were punts. They turned the ball over on downs from the 33-yard line the very first drive. And I actually thought Tech was really aggressive out of the gate. I mean, 8-yard pass, 9-yard pass on the first 2 plays, and then they go 3-and-out on the next drive. I do a drive chart during the game. The third drive, they punted. Malachi Thomas had 2 runs for a first down, and then they stalled. The fifth drive, Teuton had a 19-yard run, and then they stalled, right? John Love had a 42-yard field goal, but there's just no consistency at all. And I think you really saw Tech come alive in the second half, but that's 2 straight weeks where it's people are kind of throwing their hands up, I think, going, what in the world's going on in the first half? And we saw the aggressiveness early, but then it kind of tapered off, and it never really felt like Tech was trying to, put the foot on the gas. And like Andy said, luckily the defense came to play this weekend. But when you face a better team, you're not going to be able to only put up 3 points from offense, in air quotes, because obviously you got 7 points from Jalen Lane's punt return touchdown, which was huge. But you have to be able to score the football on offense, and Virginia Tech didn't do that. And I don't care if you're playing at Old Dominion next Saturday. If you come out and you punt 6 times on your first 8 possessions, you put yourself in a hole. That just can't happen. So, I mean, kudos to Tech for turning it around. But like Andy wrote the other day, you can't overlook the slow start.
Andy, how does this exactly happen when you have a situation where you return almost all of your production. That's the story of this team heading into 2024 from last season. You had so much momentum that back half of the year. You're rolling in the Military Bowl and towards the back half of the season against Boston College. There was no slow starts. That was a non-factor. And then you're kind of back to square one. It feels like the beginning of last year in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, new season, new team. You know, you can't, people always think that you just pick up from where the bowl game is to the start of the season. That's not really how it works. I mean, it's a long off season. Some change of personnel. You bring Ollie Jennings back. That changes the chemistry a little bit on offense with another playmaker there, and another guy that maybe you have to get the ball to, even though they didn't get the ball to him very much the other day. I think Tech found something last year in its offense where it was really running the ball. It had an identity, and right now it doesn't feel like it has that. They are not running the ball well at all. I was looking at some of these stats. 97th right now yards per carry in the country. That's 13th in the ACC, 3.49. One of the stats I like to look at is yards before and after contact. You can't sort it by team. At least I haven't found out how to on Pro Football Focus, but you can sort of reverse engineer some of this stuff. 3.21 yards after contact for the Hokies means that they're averaging 0.28 yards before contact. That's not good. These guys are getting hit right away. They're not getting down the field, not getting through holes before they make extra yardage like that. Just to compare to somebody like BC, leading the ACC in rushing, 1.98 yards before contact. So, there's a big difference there, and a lot of that comes back to the blocking. So, whether it's a blocking or they have to scheme it, I think everything starts with their run game. That was where they really found themselves last year. 300-yard games. Running the ball last year, that's when the offense was really humming. They throw it off of that. You haven't seen that much this year. And, even when they got going in the second half, what was that first drive of the second half? 12 plays, 11 runs. They just, I don't know if anybody saw the Sunday night game last night with the Lions and the Rams in overtime. And the Lions get the ball in overtime. They're like, all right, enough of this. We're just going to run it straight down your throat. They didn't stop them. I lost a couple bets because of that. I was not exactly happy with the Rams' defensive performance on that one. But, I mean, that was just like bully ball. They just went straight at them. And it kind of felt like they said, all right, enough of this nonsense. And we're trying to throw the ball, to run the ball. Like, no, you're going to get back to the basics, run the ball, throw off play action off of that. And I think that's what the Hokies need to get back to a little bit.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think Virginia Tech, it feels like Tech's kind of like bobbling identities a little bit. Like Tech has a bunch of great receivers. Tech has a bunch of great receivers, so it wants to be like in some ways, a pass-first offense. I know, like Tech wants to throw the ball.
Right.
But at the same time, the reason why, like Andy said, stuff worked so well last year was the run game. And when I look at this and I go, okay, on Virginia Tech's last real drive before the half, 10-yard pass to Benji Gosnell to start the drive. It's like Tech started the drives okay, and then just kind of shot itself in the foot. And it's like there's no consistency. And I think sometimes Tech has been too predictable in the first two games. We talked about that a lot in terms of Vanderbilt. Very easy to kind of guess what Tech was going to do throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. I thought Tech was a little bit less predictable in this game, but at the same time, if Tech just puts the ball down and runs, and we did not see many runs from Kyron Drones in this game. I was a little surprised. Now, Bashal Tutin had 22 carries, his second most in a Tech uniform. But I think Virginia Tech has to find that right balance of we're going to catch you off, we're going to try it, we're going to run, we're going to establish it, and then we're going to catch you off guard and pass it. And right now it just feels like it's back and forth, like they're trying to, they're not really sure when, if that makes sense. Like it seems like they're kind of just going off coach suggestions on NCAA football and like, whatever pops up, they're pressing the button, whether it's a run or a pass a little bit, right? Like there doesn't seem to feel like a rhythm or a plan to it. And now maybe some of that is just some of the runs got stuffed and Tech got, good plays by Marshall's defense. But the other thing is there should not have been as much pressure on Kyron Drones on a lot of those passing plays that there were. I mean, he rolled out and saved a lot of those plays. I think overall the offensive line, pretty good in the run game at times, has to be better in the passing game. And if it's a little bit better, I think it'll help open up more things.
Well, I think you can look at that. You know, they had 1st and goal at the 2. And on that drive, they ended up kicking a 42-yard field goal. First down play, they do a play action. And, I'm not going to fault them for trying to do play action at the goal line and trying to get it in. But, a no-nonsense approach there is just like, run it. You've been running pretty well. Get it down there. Try to punch it in. Bashaw Tootin is such a weapon around the goal line. He just sort of has a nose for the end zone there. And obviously Drones, as a runner too, they get in trouble when they call the pass play. And there's a blindside block, Daquan Felton, that backs them up. They get sacked on 3rd down, back them up even more. And all of a sudden you're like, how long is this field goal?
42.
They had 1st and goal, and they're kicking a field goal from beyond 40 yards. So I think sometimes it's the phrase people always throw, too cute about this stuff. It's like, man, just play bully ball. Just run it on them at that point. Try to establish something like that. And I feel like they never, outside of that one drive to open the second half and maybe a little bit more in the second half, they didn't really do that a whole lot. And they've got to get back to that, I think.
And it clearly worked. It worked on that first drive of the second half. That's the thing. It's not like Virginia Tech tried and it didn't work. I mean, I think that I believe it was a 4th down conversion. Like Tech's down there in the red zone from the 1 and went for it.
Yeah,
That's
they
right.
pitched it to
And
Tootin.
a little pitch pass to Tootin, and he walks in untouched.
1-yard touchdown.
If I think this Virginia Tech team has the weapons in the run game to push the ball down people's throats. The problem is there's not really any consistency, it feels like, with the strategy. And if the Hokies come out next week at Old Dominion and establish the run early and run, I mean, if you scheme it up right, even if teams are game planning for it, it can be successful. And I think we saw that. I mean, again, 12 play, 11 run drive. Like, it can work. So I'm curious to see where this offense goes from here, because another slow start against Old Dominion would doom them.
Let's reel Carter into this conversation a little bit. What you got?
The word identity you guys use is so key to me, because why is Virginia Tech having an identity crisis? So then it kind of goes back to, and Chris talked about it on last week's podcast, but are you guys concerned at all with maybe the jury is out on Virginia Tech and teams are able to game plan, to David's point, a little bit more fruitfully with what Virginia Tech can run offensively?
Maybe. I think it's more in Virginia Tech to figure out what they want to be.
Yeah.
And, again, they're trying to incorporate some more weapons. And, we wrote about, all these receivers they have in the offseason. You're going to pass the ball more. And, you got to keep all these guys happy throwing the ball like that. And people are like, why is Nolly Jennings getting the ball this game? It's like, well, there's only so many passes to go around. So, if you're trying to feed all those receivers and, service the ground game as well, I mean, it can be kind of difficult. But I think last year, when they hit their stride, they found out what they were. And that was run the ball, throw off play action, which you look at Kyron Drones' stats, he's exceptional off play action. His stats are incredible this year. Pretty big gulf between that and not off play action. So if you can run the ball, that opens up everything else. I mean, this is old football stuff here. This is not breaking any new ground about how you do it. And you see how that shows up in the second half. They go play action. After that drive, they ran the ball so well. They go play action, deep ball to Gosnell. And, Gosnell even said it. He said they kind of, lull you into a false sense of security as a defensive back when you see them running it so much. He thought he was a little flat-footed, went right by him, made a big catch, and, all of a sudden they're scoring a touchdown a couple plays later.
Well, let's kind of go down that alley a little bit. You say Kyron Drones great against the play action, and his numbers. I mean, his numbers are up through 2 games. 67% on his pass completion is better than last season. He's thrown for 452 yards, 3 touchdowns. Does have the 1 interception. The rushing is what is a little bit more head scratching. Now sacks are factored into this, of course. He's rushed the ball 31 times, but only for 32 yards this season, with 1 touchdown on the ground. Has it been an underwhelming start to the year for Kyron Drones? I am under the belief that it has. Particularly, it's more of an eye test thing, right? Like, everyone's like, what a catch. Steven Gosnell. Well, that should have been a touchdown. He overthrew him.
He did.
And it should have been a touchdown. And then the other
he
one.
He also put it out there far enough that it was a 49-yard gain. Instead of, underthrowing the guy, and all of a sudden the defensive back comes into play, too. So, I think Drones has been okay. You mentioned the rushing yards. A lot of sacks. They've been sacked 8 times this year. That leads the ACC. Most in the ACC. Tied for 130th nationally through 2 games. Notably, one team that's worse is ODU with 9 sacks through 2 games. So potential opportunities there for Tech's defense this weekend. But, they need to protect better. And, some of those rushing opportunities are him running for his life. It's not him being the aggressor on a read play or something like that, and then he's taking off down the field and doling out punishment. He's, trying to escape pressure, trying to make something happen, looking downfield, and running horizontally on the field, and has to throw the ball away or eat it or get sacked or short run like that. So again, just sort of out of sync. Pry mentioned it. As he said, he didn't quite look like himself in the first half of that game. Second half, he did. He was 5 for 5, 90 some yards, I think, and a touchdown. So I think he played better in the second half, and continued to protect him better. And I think he will play better in the future.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I think we've seen Kyron Drones be really, really good, really efficient. And I think the biggest key is Virginia Tech has to establish the run first. Because if Tech establishes the run with a guy like Bashal Tootin, and you saw Malachi Thomas and PJ Prelo get in there, I think all 3 of those guys averaged over 5 yards per carry. I mean, this is where Tech got into trouble at times last year, because Tech went away from it. If Tech continues to pound the run and then passes off of it, I think that's where Kyron Drones is more comfortable, because defenses can't sit on him or send a bunch of guys at him every single play. I mean, you can, but it's not the best practice to play defense, if that makes sense, right? Like, he's in a more comfortable position, and I'm interested to see, can he carry over that success, right? Because we saw how comfortable he was in the second half. Now, it's probably easy as a quarterback when you're handing the ball off for the most part, and then only throwing it on rare occasions. That opens up a lot more. The defense has to kind of roll guys down into the box and play more on the run game, key in on that more. I think that makes his life easier. If Virginia Tech isn't running the ball as well, Tech doesn't, Drones does not have as much success in the pass game. So, but I wouldn't worry too much about him running the ball, like in his rushing yards. Like, it is weird, but I think that a lot of it is the sacks Andy's talking about, where there were too many times, I thought, where a guy was coming off the edge free, had a free look at Drones, and Drones had to roll away and throw it out of bounds. And he's good at that, but Tech has to be a little bit better in the pass blocking to give him more time when he does throw, so he's not losing rushing yards.
Well, the common thread is the blocking needs to be better. Pass blocking, run blocking, I don't think they've found the right combination on the offensive line. They just don't look, strong as a unit right now. They tried to rotate a little bit. Bob Schick played some left guard in this game. Typically, that's Brody Meadows' spot, but he was not dressed for this game. We'll ask Brent Pry about what the situation is there this week. So, they have to find the right combination there. And, with 4 of the starters back from last year, you would have expected some improvement on that front, and it just doesn't seem like it's been there. And now, 3 of the guys are in new positions from where they were last year. So there's maybe a feeling out process there, but have to have better blocking for run blocking, have to have better blocking for pass blocking. I think the offense will go if that group's improves. And, we talked about before the season, that was the concern about the offense, is this offensive line needs to come together for all those, special players out wide and Drones and Tootin to hit their ceiling. You need time for plays to develop, and you need holes for running backs to go through. And right now, you're not necessarily seeing that.
I promise we do have some positives to get to with the offense and then a whole lot with the defense as well. But I did just want to bring up one more thing. Carter, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and then we'll open it up for Andy and David as well. The one thing that Brent Pry seemed to hammer home in the post-game press conference was the fact that they weren't converting on third down. Tech was 1 for 9 on third down in the first half, 5 for 16 in the game in total. What can you maybe attribute that to? Like, how do you, that's part of the slow start. How do you get better there week to week?
Oh, I think the biggest thing was they were playing behind the sticks, it felt like. I mean, how many times was it 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15? When you're playing behind on first, second down, like, that's tough. And you're talking about a team that is still trying to find things offensively. You can't run the ball on 3rd and 12 and expect to pick up 15 yards. And I think that's the biggest thing. Just watching the game from the stands on Saturday, you can't continue to play behind the sticks. And that's a big reason why Virginia Tech didn't get in the end zone offensively in the first half. I mean, you said 0 for 6 in the first half is what you said?
They went 1 for 9 on third down in the first half.
First half. Okay. So, I mean, you're not going to win a lot of football games doing something like that.
Wide receiver screens on 3rd and 15 don't typically work.
No.
And we've seen a lot of them this year. So
what is with the conservative play calling then?
Is it conservative or is it just unsuccessful? They're in 3rd and long because they're not, doing well on 1st and 2nd down. And I think, again, a lot of that comes to getting ahead of the sticks and running the ball. I mean, you saw what a weapon Tootin was. Tugboat Tootin, as we like to call him, after he had the gold chain. That was pretty cool. Has a beware of dog mouth guard that he has, and like the words on there. So he's everything you want in a running back. You just got to feed him consistently and get the running game going. And if you're running the ball on 1st and 2nd down, then you're not in 3rd and 15. You're not in 3rd and 8. And those become a little bit easier to convert. And then you could bring the running game even into it on 3rd down. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, a drones read play, then you got a couple options on the ground. I think all the problems stem from the same area. They're not doing well on 1st and 2nd down because they're not having a lot of blocking and getting successful plays. And, I think that's what it boils down to.
To go back to kind of what Carter was saying, Virginia Tech's 3rd down plays. Tech had 5 3rd down attempts of 3 yards or shorter, converted 3 of them, so 3 of 5. Third between 4 and 7 yards to gain, 2 of 6. On 3rd and 8 yards or more, Tech was 0 of 5. So again,
it adds up.
mean, when this was a conversation we had a lot last year, where I ran the numbers and I was like, there were too many times where Tech's just shooting itself in the foot, putting itself behind the sticks. Just it's hard to play football like that, and it limits your play calling. I don't know that Tech is necessarily being conservative. I just think stuff's not working, and if the Hokies can establish the run, like Andy said, use Bashal Tootin. I mean, he's an absolute weapon. And I think we've seen the Virginia Tech wide receivers come out really well too. Jalen Lane has obviously played pretty well. Daquan Felton's had a couple big catches. Stephen Gosnell, I don't think anybody's had more of an impact really than him. Benji Gosnell has been great too. Ollie Jennings hasn't probably gotten the ball as much as he should, but the weapons are there. But there are too many times Virginia Tech is putting itself into a corner, shall we say.
I promise you, Virginia Tech won this game. Whether we're talking about this, Pry comes in after the game. He's like, dang, don't y'all like writing about wins more than losses? It's just like trying to get it right. I think he understood the mood after the win wasn't exactly as great it was. They did turn it on in the second half. They played better offensively in the second half. Defense, I thought, played pretty well all game long. So we are certainly nitpicking about what ended up being, what was it?
31-14.
A 17-point win.
Did not cover.
Yeah, nitpicking a 3-score win here for sure, but I think it's also taking a realistic view of how the offense has played so far, what's coming up on the schedule, and how well they need to play in those games for Tech to be successful. So, don't want to dump on a win too much, as we seem to be doing this entire podcast. They did do some good things in this game.
Well, and so let's go down that road, because I do have some positives listed out, and I wanted to not only get your guys' thoughts, see if you had anything to add to the list, and then there's a lot of good things to talk about with the defense. So for the positive offensively, Tech did go 4 for 4 in the red zone. Granted, you would have liked to get there a little bit more maybe, but 4 for 4 in the red zone with 3 touchdowns. And it could have been 4 if there wasn't the penalties, to your point earlier, Andy. Then I had the Gosnell brothers. They're legit. I mean, Benji had that diving catch as well. Everyone's going to talk about Steven's diving catch. Benji had that one where he kind of had to come back to it and dove the other way for it. And then Steven with the long ball. He's had such an impact through 2 weeks. And then the third positive I had is PJ Prelo getting in the mix, had 5 carries for 23 yards, but he had a big first down run. I don't remember if it was 3rd or 4th down. It must have been 3rd down. But getting either in the red zone or towards the red zone. Again, I was on the field shooting the game, so my vantage point, sometimes something looks like a 15-yard run and it was 3 yards, and vice versa, especially if they're running laterally. You really don't know how far they're going. But Prelude had that first down run as well, so it was good to see him get in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the thing that stood out to me was the Gosnell catch. I mean, I continue to be amazed that this guy tore his ACL 9 months ago. And, you know, he's not just out there being like a serviceable possession receiver, which I think is kind of what he was last year. And, you know, he's going past guys. He's running past them. He's making big plays down the field. 44-yard catch, 49-yard catch so far this year. I mean, if he's doing that with the other weapons they have, I mean, there's just a lot to like in this receiving game. So very impressed by how he's come back. You know, we talked about Tootin before. I just think he's a baller at running back. I mean, I think you can't feed him enough with the ball. And they actually took him off kickoff returns in this game, put PJ Priolu back there doing kick returns. You know, they said, you know, save 5 or 6 plays on him a game, a little bit more energy, a little bit more juice at the running back spot. And if this is the result of that, you know, what we saw in the game, 120 yards, I think it was 16 shy of his high with the Hokies. You know, that worked out pretty well. I think they should continue doing that if that's going to be advantageous for them.
And to your credit, the most carries he's ever had as a Virginia Tech.
I think it was
tailback.
second most. I think
It was the second most?
I think he had 24
Second
against
most.
somebody last year.
I think it was Pitt.
Okay.
And he might
Gotcha.
have gotten to his yards. He kind of got rolled up on his ankle. I forget exactly how the play unfolded, but he seemed to
Right,
be
he
fine.
came off,
He
yeah.
seemed to be fine. They brought him in for post-game interviews, which they wouldn't do if anything was serious was going on.
Carter, David, any positives to kind of hammer home before we move on to the defense here?
Yeah, I actually have a trivia question.
Ooh, love a good trivia question.
The last Virginia Tech player to have at least 22 rushing attempts and at least 120 yards, which is what Tootin did. The last Virginia Tech player to do that in a game was whom?
Say one more time for me.
The last Virginia Tech player before Bashal Tootin
Yep.
with at least 22 carries and at least 120 rushing yards.
Khalil Herbert.
I mean, Herbert would be my guess. Has there been somebody since
Not
then?
Herbert.
Was it before
or after?
him?
Before. We're going back to
Lee Suggs.
This was 2 head coaches ago.
Trey Edmonds.
It was
Was it J.C. Coleman?
Trayvon McMillan.
Oh, okay.
McMillan had a 24 carry, 135-yard game
Is that NC
Was it
State?
NC
against
State?
Georgia Tech in 2015.
Okay.
That was the last one. He had 2 of those that season. He had a 142-yard game against Duke. J.C. Coleman was on the list, but just farther down.
Really? Huh.
I'm surprised Herbert didn't do it. I guess that was just a volume thing because he
Yeah.
had the yardage like every
Yeah.
game, but he didn't have the workload, I guess.
The carries. Sure.
You want to talk some positives?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that impressed me the most was Brent Pry talked all week about like one of the things that he mentioned was the team has to have better momentum swings. He talked about the pendulum and I think it was in his weekly press conference last Tuesday about just when you're in those tight games, you need to have a big swing to get it all back. And against Vanderbilt, they had a little swing, and then Vanderbilt swung it right back. And in this game, obviously, Tech ended up winning it. I thought one of the more impressive things was the way Tech came out and handled business in the second half, where it wasn't like, oh, hey, we just let Marshall hang around a little bit. Both sides of the ball. I mean, the defense was doing its job, forced a whole lot of punts, but the offense came out, handled business, and then obviously Mansour Delane had a big interception that kind of set up another touchdown drive. And so it's like all of a sudden it went from a 3-point game to a 3-possession game really quickly. And if Virginia Tech can turn that on in big games, that's huge. I mean, we talk all about the negatives in the first half, but the positives in the second half, I mean, it was all over the place. And I think the way the team kind of responded, was able to swing it and kind of put the game out of reach a little ways, that's a positive sign because we didn't get to see that last week. But that's what happens when you put yourself in a hole early.
Let's go ahead and use the metaphor and swing it here. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. As our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company's support has been invaluable to TSL, helping us to bring you all the great content across all of our platforms. They offer a variety of checking and savings account options that are sure to meet all of your banking needs. That includes free checking. Visit firstbank.com to find the account that is right for you. Let's continue that conversation and talk about this defense because, David, you're right. Not only did the offense come out swinging, the defense was swinging the entire ball game. We weren't sure who was going to play quarterback for Marshall. Ended up being Stone Earl the entire game. Remember, they circled through 3 different quarterbacks in their season opening blowout victory. Then Stone Earl ended up getting the nod, never came out of the game. I thought in particular the pass defense was stellar.
Yeah.
I mean, they were great.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the final stats, 12 pass breakups. I know sometimes you're kind of on the whim of the official score on what they consider a pass breakup and that stuff, but that was the second most they've had since 1987, I believe, going back, looking at the historical database on that stuff. They were put in a lot of positions where they had to make those plays. And that was sort of, Marshall was going to get the ball out quick. They're going to spread the field, a lot of one-on-ones where the defender doesn't have safety help or anything like that. And I thought, top to bottom in the secondary there, I thought they all stepped up pretty well. Certainly Monsieur Delane, coming back after the game he had last week, targeted 8 times. There was 1 catch. It was a spectacular catch that the guy made up. I mean, that was like SportsCenter best play of the day.
Yeah,
I
it was
think.
number one. Number one.
Deservedly so.
Yeah.
But that's what it took to complete a pass on Monsieur Delane.
That was the only
That was the only
completion.
one. After the week he had, week 1, pretty good bounce back. Dante Lovett, I thought, played pretty well. Dorian Strong is always pretty good. But I think that's an encouraging sign for this pass defense that, even some of the younger guys were coming along and making plays. And, 131 yards, took 36 attempts to get there. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially going against an air raid type offense that Marshall has. They're going to put you in some challenging spots. You're going to need guys to win those one-on-ones.
I want to hammer home your point a little bit here, Andy, with I'm a big believer in if you say something like we were taught this in play-by-play, right? Bill's always like, if you're going to give your opinion, back it up with some factual evidence here. So here's some factual evidence to back up Andy. Dante Lovett, he graded out the best of any Virginia Tech Hokie in pass coverage on Saturday. Targeted 4 times, had 2 pass breakups. One of them was on a big 3rd down. And nothing's better than, obviously, you get the roar of the 3rd down. And then all of a sudden, everyone kind of eases off for a second when the pass goes in the air, and he just came in and spiked it. And I think Marshall was still back in their own territory, but Lane just went bonkers, and I was like, that was awesome. So that was pretty cool. And then Mansour played 37 snaps in pass coverage. He was targeted 8 times. Again, allowed just the 1 catch. He had 2 pass breakups and an interception. So huge bounce back performance for number 4.
Well, that's the attitude you need to take as a cornerback, as they always say, short memory.
Yeah.
You have to wipe that last game out. I think that's, it shows a mature approach by Mansour that, he knows he didn't have a great game in week 1, and he came back and, whatever he did during the week to prepare for this game, he did it very well and played excellent. If he plays like that and Dorian on the other side, you've got pretty good 1-2 punch there at cornerback.
And I think we've seen some really good stuff from Lovett now. I thought the way Tech played defense at times was it was really interesting to see the way Tech was kind of shifting stuff around. You had on nickel situations, Jalen Jones has been the nickel back, but he's playing safety now with Jalen Stroman out. So you had Mose Phillips and Jalen Stroman at safety, and then you had all 3 corners on the field. You had Lovett and Monsieur Delane out wide, and then you had Dorian Strong in the slot. I mean, that's a pretty good trio there. Great to see Delane improve. Good to see the Hokies get their first turnover of the year. I think that's a big one. Mose Phillips tipped the pass. Monsieur Delane caught it. A little bit of a redemption from last week.
Did you see Derek Jones just straight tackle Mansour to the
he
floor?
was right
that
there
was
on the
hilarious.
sideline.
He was so hyped.
It was made for it because Mansour had to sort of tiptoe on the sideline and slowed up right into the bear hug on the sideline.
It was
there.
awesome. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah. Marshall had 9 possessions in the first half. 7 of them were punts. The only one Marshall scored a touchdown on was off of a blocked punt. So it's Marshall got the ball at the 5-yard line. It's like the defense really didn't give up anything. It wasn't really until that 69-yard run in the second half. I think Price said it was a trap play, and Dorian Strong tracked the guy down. I mean, that was really and again, we saw it last year. Those big plays are killer. But if that was really the only play, that's a good day for the defense. I thought overall, very strong. Got in the backfield enough. I thought Kelly Lawson played very well. I thought he was active. He had 3 pass breakups.
Crazy. Should have had a pick.
That was right there. Like, he gets credit for a
yeah.
pass breakup on that, but it was like, if you drop a pick that's right there, is that really a pass breakup? But
Yeah.
you know, you get the stat, I
But
guess.
I thought overall the defense was good. It's kind of what I think Virginia Tech fans hoped to see last week from that group. When you don't really give up much, when you force a turnover, a whole lot of punts. I mean, the defense came to play and did its job today, or on Saturday. I think that's the most impressive thing. I think as a whole, that group bounced back pretty well. Obviously, completely different scheme you're preparing for in terms of the air raid, but a good performance, and I think a confidence booster for that group, because I mean, after getting run on, to come out and, like Andy said, barely like 130 yards on basically 36 passes. You did your job. And the defensive line, I think, got in there and made a couple big plays when they had to. Keyshawn Burgos got a sack. I thought we saw Aeneas Peebles a little bit. There was one play I saw where he was like triple teamed. I think it might have been the play Burgos got a sack. He was triple teamed on it. So it's like that group, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, it's having an impact.
I was almost a little surprised that when Burgos got his sack, Peebles was in there with him, and I was like, they might give Peebles a half a sack on that one, but I was almost glad they didn't, because Burgos did get there first. It was close, and then Peebles kind of finished it off, so Burgos ended up getting the full sack on that one. And then the play where the 69-yard run by A.J. Turner, their tailback, he had won the foot race, and then Dorian comes flying out of nowhere. I mean, that was a heck of an extra effort there to show off his speed. Carter, you seemed like you had something over there.
Chris Coleman called the Christian Fitzpatrick catch the best catch in Lane Stadium history. Also, one more thing on the defense.
Wow.
Tech got Caleb Spencer involved defensively too at the Sam spot. He played 10 snaps defensively for him.
We thought they might do that,
Yeah.
especially with Stroman being banged up.
Yeah, I thought
they got a lot of rotating in. Early and often they got rotational guys into the game. I think Pry had mentioned wanting to do that, especially with the younger defensive backs in that game. And you're going to need those guys later in the season, especially if you have any kind of injuries. So probably a smart move in a game that they should have won handily, a little more closer than comfort early on. But I mentioned you take that 69-yard run out. It was a bad play, and they got the big run. 3.1 yards of carry for Marshall, so pretty good run defense in that whole thing. I think outside of that one play and outside of the short field defense after the sudden change with the block punt, I think everything else pretty satisfactory with the defense.
Yeah, you saw a lot of rotation, like Andy said. You saw, it's like Caleb Woodson's coming in playing this spot, Caleb Spencer's coming in playing there, Kelly Lawson, Jaden McDonald, a lot of rotation at linebacker. We'd already talked about the young DBs, and Virginia Tech rotates up front to begin with. And the good news is it wasn't like you didn't really see any drop off in the rotation. Granted, this is Marshall, but I think that's a positive takeaway that everybody that came on the field did a pretty good job.
As Chris's stand-in, I'm obligated to say that I don't like the linebacking rotation.
You just don't like it.
I'm sitting in for Chris. So I
Right.
have to get Chris's opinion out there. I don't like all the linebacking shuffling. That's my strong opinion.
Carter,
for Chris.
Can we task you with I don't know if Will was kidding or not, but he wanted that comment read on the pod.
Yeah.
All about Chris. So we'll
Sure.
task you with tracking that one
I got
down.
it pulled up. Do you
got
want me to
pulled up?
read it?
Yeah, read it off. All
right.
This is what they said about our awesome lead analyst and columnist.
All
Chris
right, here we
Coleman.
go.
This is good because it's evoking opinions out of people.
This is
That's what he's
from
supposed to do.
This is from Jambo_Jackbelly. Marshall fan here.
Tons of credibility already.
I tried to watch your podcast. The obnoxious guy in blue, Chris Coleman, is such a cocky, obnoxious know-it-all. I had to turn it off. I don't know how you guys can listen to that dude week in and week out. I don't think we have the horses to play with you guys, he's a Marshall fan, this year. But I'm hoping we find some success and something to build on, either throwing the ball or on run defense. We appreciate your fans' class and hospitality. Take care. There you go.
I was trying to get an obnoxious know-it-all T-shirt printed up and rush ordered, and I couldn't quite get it here in time. So maybe in future podcasts.
There we go. That's some next level stuff right there. That's funny. Wanted to ask you guys overall, overlooking Is this a result of, because remember, Marshall was not very good offensively last year. Obviously, it's a very different looking offense. So many transfers. That's just the modern era of the sport. Was this the Hokies defense, like, figured things out after last week? Not that they were really bad last week in any regard. They just played a pretty talented quarterback that kind of did everything himself. Or was this Marshall's not very good, or a little bit of both?
Maybe a little bit of both, but whatever it was, that they played the opponent in front of them, and they did pretty well. So, we can project like, oh, you want to keep them to less than 150 yards or something like that. Personally, I'm glad that the rushing total over hit, because in buy or sell, I took over accidentally. Not intentionally, but it still won. So, but yeah, I mean, it's starting to nitpick a little bit if you get on this defensive performance. I mean, outside of the one long run, there was not a lot to nitpick in this one.
No.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. The great thing about sports is that every game is completely different than the other. And like Andy said, Virginia Tech came out and the defense did what it had to do on Saturday. And that's impressive. I think, again, as a group, to be able to bounce back, you kind of got a little bit embarrassed at times against Vanderbilt. To come out and rally and respond well, Tech really didn't give up anything at all. I mean, my drive chart is literally punt, 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 punt. And there's a missed field goal in there early. So it was a good showing. Now, can you string performances together? I know Old Dominion's not the big bad wolf or anything, but you do have some really good teams coming down the pipe. Can you gain confidence? Can you continue to string good performances together? Because if so, we've talked about how good this secondary can be, and I think the defensive line has a whole lot of talent that maybe we haven't seen yet, and maybe, like Andy said, maybe Tech will take advantage of some poor offensive line play from Old Dominion this weekend. But I think this group has the makings to be a pretty good unit. Maybe this was just the building block they needed.
Last thing here before we're going to get into a little bit of a ACC conversation here. Jalen Lane, pretty darn good at returning punts. Obviously, he takes the one to the house, fights through a face masking penalty. But before that, he had a nice 18-yard return as well that almost looked like he almost had the seam and kind of got wrapped up there. But he's sharp back there.
I mean, he was fourth or fifth in the country a couple years ago in Middle Tennessee. Like, how great of a luxury is it that your all ACC punt returner is injured, Tucker Holloway?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, we'll just get this top 5 guy from a couple years ago that'll come in. And if he's, a little banged up, like I guess he was at Vanderbilt, like Ollie Jennings is back there, and he's a sure-handed guy that can do some things. So, they are blessed at the punt return position. And, Lane had one last year that was kind of similar to this one, I thought, where he came up on it and then
he actually referenced
through.
it.
Yeah, I mean, he scored that touchdown. There was a holding penalty against that one at Boston College, and it was a legit holding penalty, so they had to wipe it out. But this one he came up, and it almost looked like the Marshall players kind of stopped a little bit because they were thinking he was going to fair catch it, but he didn't, and he just got through that first wave and fought through a face mask at the end by the punter, I believe, was the one who actually hit him with the face mask. So good to see him get in the end zone. But yeah, he's such a jitterbug of a punt returner, a very effective guy in that role, and that can be a weapon for this team.
He said he walked over to the sideline, and everybody's like, "Dude, you're crazy for returning that." I mean, when he's got like 4 or 5 defenders around him, and he just caught it, took one step, beat the first guy, and then it's basically he had offensive linemen and a punter to beat.
Yeah,
right. And he's like, "Dude, he told me." And he said this probably because his family was in the room waiting for him to finish up media. But he was like, dude, I knew, man, if I got tackled by an offensive lineman, my family wouldn't let me hear the end of it. But yeah, I mean, you've got Tucker Holloway, who returned, obviously, that one against Georgia Tech 2 years ago. He's hurt, but Jalen Lane can kind of make something out of nothing. And in this game, it was huge. Kind of changed all the momentum for Virginia Tech. The offense, still struggled and didn't get anything going in the first half, but it gave Virginia Tech some breathing room. I mean, Tech doesn't have that. You're probably going into half trailing.
It felt like some of those games in the past where like nothing is going offensively, and then like Greg Stroman pops a punt return, or Tavion Robinson. Like, I feel like they did that a couple times over the course of time there, and sometimes you need that spark and then things got going eventually. But it's like a sort of the Lane Stadium crowd is like, all right, let's get something going here, and then a big special teams play. I mean, you've seen it tons of times here. Beamer ball lives on, I guess.
The good news is there's no other 83, so if Lane's returning punts, you know where I'm going with that.
Too soon.
I think one other thing Lane said was, he's like, I saw the flag, and his first thought was going back to the Boston College game last year of, oh my God, it's coming back. He said he was on his knees, looking at Ollie Jennings, like, oh my God, dude. And then he's like, but I got hit in the face mask, so maybe it was that. And then they called the face mask.
So I'll have Nick interject it right here. I have the perfect clip. It all happened right in front of me. So he went from the highest to high to the lowest to lows, back to the highest to high. So he breaks free, runs it in, and he's literally running right at me. So we have a sick shot of it.
I thought it was really good.
And he pulls the face mask, gets in the end zone. He's so hyped. And then he's celebrating with the guys or whatever. Ali comes up to him, the last come up to him, and he literally just falls to his knees and goes down like this, and Ollie's saying something to him in his ear, and he gets up and Ollie pulls him up, and he's all sluggish to the sideline, and then someone on the sideline says or actually the ref is the one that just says
Face mask.
And then he just goes nuts on the sideline and everyone's going nuts with him. I was like, that man just went from here to here, way back up to here.
Remember how his season ended last year? It was not only the BC punt return, but he had one wiped out, like a 70-yard catch against UVA that got wiped out, which was a bogus penalty.
Right.
Like
Holding
the
on
BC one
Caden
was
Moore.
legit, and then they called
Phantom.
Cade Moore for a phantom hold in that game. Hard to believe that game could get more lopsided than it was, but I mean, 70-yard touchdowns don't come along every day. So to lose that or lose a big play like a punt return, I could easily see how he could be devastated by that. So glad to see him get it to count.
Yeah, that was a great play. Now the other side of the special teams coin is what
Can't get
happened
a block.
later. Yeah, I mean the punt blocked, just a kind of a free rusher off the edge. So I mean this. You've seen the highs and the lows of the special teams unit. Obviously, really good that Jalen Lane can return a punt, and Tech obviously knows what it has in Bashal Tootin returning kicks, even though it kind of took him off that unit this week. But there's still John Love has been really, really solid as well. Don't want to jinx him, but he's made 18 in a row, which is, dating back to last year, which is really, really good. So yeah, Gio's knocking on wood, trying to find
real wood.
Yeah, it is.
Knocking on our fake wood.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's real.
But at the
Doesn't
same
count.
At the same time, I think you wrote about it this week. It's like, if this special teams unit is going to be game changing, you can't have the gaffes.
Well, that's one per game so far. They had the double numbers thing in the first game, and then they had the block punt on this one. The guy got the free run off the edge. He kind of did the thing where he's out wide, and then he joins the rest of the thing and came, off the side. Nobody even put a hand on him. I don't know if that was all on the blocking or if it was a slow operation too. We actually didn't have a chance to ask Pry about that afterwards. We'll ask him on Tuesday about this. But that's only the second punt they've had blocked in the last 10 years, something like that. So it doesn't happen a whole
Fluky
lot
once in a while.
Blacksburg, but it's one. That's 2 mistakes in 2 weeks, and in tight games you can't have that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, it felt like the world was burning last week a little bit after Virginia Tech fell in Nashville. You get back in the win column. You're 1-1. Beautiful thing is, you're undefeated in a wide open Atlantic Coast Conference with Florida State at the bottom at 0-2. Who would have ever thought? This thing is very much so wide open for anybody's taking.
This Boston College Virginia ACC championship game that's coming up. Based on the standings right now,
there's 2 teams that are at the top, and one of them's not Virginia.
Oh, they're out
Okay,
there. They're out
all
there.
right.
Wait a second now.
He came with the receipts.
It's a 3-way tie in first place. I'm just saying. We talked a lot in the offseason when people were talking about breakout season for Virginia Tech potentially. They're like, well, the schedule. Look at the schedule. If they can't go 10-2 against this schedule, all of a sudden the schedule looks a little bit tougher than it did originally. Rutgers has looked solid in the non-conference coming up. Miami might be the best team in the ACC. As much as we like to rag on Miami for the last 2 decades, they've looked pretty good so far, and all the other contenders have flopped in one way or another. We'll see if that keeps up. Stanford, we've talked about that just being a tricky game out there. BC is ranked 24th They've looked impressive so far. Went down to Florida State and won that game. Have a really interesting game at Missouri this week.
And they're a double-digit. They're a 2-touchdown dog.
I was kind of surprised the Gameday didn't choose that one.
Yeah.
That is the only
They're going to the
top
wrong
25 game of the
They're going to the
week.
wrong Columbia.
Yeah, I thought
this
that was
week.
a more
Yeah.
interesting game than LSU South Carolina. All due respect to Shane down there in South Carolina, I would not have picked that game on the thing. But after that, Georgia Tech, we see what they did already in the opener against Florida State. At Syracuse, I think we've put the alarm bells out there about that game anyway. And I see Gio smirking over there about how well Syracuse has played so far. But Syracuse is on the cusp of the top 25 too now. And Clemson, bad first loss. I think a lot of teams will look bad against Georgia this season. Whooped Appalachian State pretty bad. Looked pretty good offensively. Got those young receivers
52
involved in
first
that
half
game.
points,
So,
Carter said?
56.
so Clemson is not as bad as they looked in that first week. So, this schedule all of a sudden looks a little bit tougher, and the ACC just being wide open with Florida State's almost out of it with 2 conference losses already. I mean, that's
I think
tough.
they're cooked.
Yeah, that's tough, especially if you're trying to come back and win any kind of tiebreaker at the end of the season. To be one of the top 2 teams in a 17-team league with 2 losses is going to be pretty tough. And by the way, hosting Memphis this week. Memphis is pretty good.
Let's peek at that spread.
Mike Norvell's former team coming down there to play them. I mean, I think it's like 6.
It
Florida
is
State by 6.
right now. It's -7 for Florida
7,
State.
okay.
But it could have moved.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Memphis kind of interesting there, but I think top to bottom the ACC is very interesting right now because do you trust Miami as the favorite right now?
Gio does.
Historically, it's tough to do.
I think I said from the beginning of the year that Miami was legit, and I think they've shown that. Cam Ward is hooping.
Okay.
He looks stellar.
Well, they beat up on Florida. Florida is not good. I think
Are they though? I mean, is Florida not
Florida's
that
not good.
Florida's not good.
I think Miami's that good.
they're
and
this
Florida,
close to firing Billy Napier right now. And you're talking
Sure.
about like Florida is like come on now.
DJ Lagway looked great this year.
And
Or
then
this week.
who they beat last week? It was
Florida A&M.
A&M. So whatever, Patsy.
That
going out
ain't
there.
it, yeah.
Hey, I'm high on Miami.
I'm not saying that Miami is not good. I'm just saying let's not pencil them into the playoff quite bit.
I think
quite
they've
yet.
just looked better than anybody else in the conference thus far.
Well, yeah, because
Sure.
the conference has kind of stunk it up so far. It's not been
Louisville,
great.
Louisville looks good.
Okay, who have they played?
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody.
Got
Cal.
Yeah, Cal beat Auburn.
Cal
Auburn
holding
stinks.
it up for the ACC in this
Louisville's beaten Austin P and Jacksonville State.
They've put up some points, though.
They
I'm
have,
gonna be
yes.
impressed anytime somebody
62
drops
and
60.
49. Yeah, I mean, I think this is in terms of Virginia Tech. This is interesting because the first ACC game on the Hokies schedule is Miami. I mean, that's a Friday night game. If assuming Miami doesn't lose one of these next 2 weeks, that's going to be a XXL game going down there. And then I know Stanford's towards the bottom, hasn't played an ACC game yet, but like Andy said, this is not the easy schedule. It doesn't look like it's going to be the easy schedule that some people thought. I know you got Duke and UVA at the end of the year, but I mean UVA gutted that one out at Wake Forest. Now, obviously, Wake is its own animal, but we've seen Virginia Tech have its share of highs and lows too. So, Gio, I have to say I was impressed by your Syracuse team the other day. They beat Georgia Tech pretty well. That was impressive.
Kyle McCord.
This is a big day for Giovanni Heater on the podcast. He's getting some Syracuse recognition.
I'm gonna get slandered.
No.
The only thing that would have been funnier is if we had Andy talk, and then as soon as we started the ACC combo, we came back to me on camera with a Kyle McCord jersey on.
Okay.
thing. Do you have one?
I do.
Oh, wow.
It is?
Okay.
Wow. You're fully on board. That's
Well, what it actually is it's a Garrett Schrader jersey. He's
Did
their
you put
quarterback.
duct tape over the
Duct
top
tape
of it?
on the
Oh,
back.
my
They happen to
gosh.
both wear the number 6. So I didn't need to get a new jersey. I duct taped the
smart.
back and wrote McCord.
That's just ingenuity right there.
Yeah.
What if this is the second year that they've had no divisions in the ACC? It feels like the ACC Coastal sort of infected the rest of the league with what it used to have all those years. It was, wide open, unpredictability, you don't know how it's going to go. And all of a sudden, Florida State's 17th place in a 17-team conference right now.
Crazy. That
was the preseason pick by the media. Great job by us, obviously, doing the pick. But this could be a pretty fun ACC season. I mean, if this is how it starts out, especially... if Clemson loses a game along the way, I think Clemson's still going to be in the mix as the season goes on. I mean, you could have, maybe not from a TV perspective, Jim Phillips maybe not doing jumping, cartwheels at the prospect of Florida State and Clemson not being in the title game. But you could have some new blood in that game. It could be an interesting way to finish the season.
It is crazy, though. Like, if you guys had to redo your preseason poll, who would be in the ACC title game right now? Miami, probably. I haven't seen Louisville play yet.
Probably Clemson, Miami for me. I had Clemson 2 and Miami 3.
Yeah, I'd probably go Clemson, Miami.
Here's my problem with
I have a little bit more faith in Miami after seeing them so far, but still just generally as a program, not one you always want to. The most trustworthy team program from week to week.
This thing is wide open, to your point. Like, who's buying Virginia Tech right now? Who's buying NC State right now?
Nobody's buying NC State.
After they threw that pick 6 in the first half, there was no getting off the mat.
Well, and they struggled. My whole point was so we did the betting show that we always do. Yeah. We had picked Tennessee to kill them, and they barely got past Western Carolina. And sure, that's like week 1, whatnot, but Carter Hill would be throwing dimes in Jamie Chadwell's offense. I don't think Grayson McCall's the answer.
Interesting.
It's interesting.
I didn't know you were a ball player,
and this is 2 straight years they've had a transfer quarterback come in there not look great. I mean, Brennan Armstrong was so fantastic that 1 year at Virginia and just, never really put it together except for one game against Virginia Tech last year.
Well, and the difference is
the
they don't have
McCall
the
thing is
defense.
interesting because I don't know if it's the offensive fit doesn't feel right for him or what it is, but the other side of it is I think Tennessee's pretty good. I think Tennessee will make a lot of teams look bad this year, so maybe didn't see the best of NC State in that game.
With NC State, last year they still won 9 games, right? And the offense sputtered a lot. You had multiple quarterbacks playing at different points in time, but the one thing they could lean on was Peyton Wilson and a very stout defense. They don't have that this year. NC State struggling defensively, and you lose that, and then you're off it they're just not as good of a football team, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lose an All-American linebacker. I think that's going to happen with a lot of defenses.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting. I don't think SMU's look very good this year. People kind of pick them as a darling team in the preseason,
Well, they have
possibly.
quarterback controversy.
And they lost to BYU.
North Carolina has a quarterback injury. I think that they're not going to be all that great this year. So wide open race should be pretty fun.
Pitt beat Cincinnati. Beat up on the Big 12.
Yeah,
There you go.
27-6 down, came back and won that game.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that was Pitt's biggest comeback since 85.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a wide open conference. And honestly, if you're Virginia Tech, you're probably sitting there going, man, we have to go to Miami first. I mean, that's going to be an exciting game, but at the same time, I mean, imagine this race continues to unfold. I was just looking at the schedule. You've got Georgia Tech, Louisville next weekend. That should be an interesting one.
Very good game.
But Virginia Tech, Miami is going to be one of the most marquee games potentially of this year, and it's Tech's opener. So that's an interesting tone setter, right? And I think that's all the more reason as we talk about all the positives and negatives from this Saturday, the Hokies have to figure out figure their thing out this week and going into Rutgers, because you don't want to drop that Rutgers game. But you got Miami knocking on the door right after that, and that's a short week, short turnaround before you go out to the West Coast. It's only ramping up, it's ramping up quickly here, and I think Virginia Tech has a good opportunity on its hands because it is wide open. But at the same time, if Tech comes out and plays like we have seen, it's kind of like a two-faced team a little bit, right? Poor offense in the first half, great offense in the second half. What team's going to show up? We don't know.
Got to play 4 quarters of complimentary football. That's what Brent Pry will tell you. And I think that's the perfect way to wrap things up this week. Anything out of Carter and Andy before we ask what's going on editorial-wise this week as well?
No, got the usual week going down to Norfolk where everything goes smoothly for Virginia Tech every time they play there. So
Lock the locker
see.
room.
Yeah, that's probably. Take the stairs, lock the locker room. Maybe don't bet the Hokies as double-digit favorites. Historically, that has not worked out very well.
Did you see that Tech opened as like a 14, 16 point favorite?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. No, I
Hokies are 0 for 2 against the spread this year, unfortunately.
0 for 2 against the spread and
Lost
0
outright.
for 2 against the spread or 0 for 2 outright losses and against the spread, I guess, in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Now this is a big one, but we'll talk more about that this week.
Carter, what do you got going on this week? Heading down to Norfolk.
Going
of
to
course.
Norfolk, yeah.
We'll be there.
Just chilling here. We'll have some Tech Sideline video content throughout the week, and Nick Brown's done a really good job behind the scenes putting that together, and hopefully maybe Virginia Tech can pick up their first ever victory in Norfolk this weekend. That would be nice for the morale here at Tech Sideline.
That was a crazy statement, but it's true. All right, we'll come back at you on Wednesday with another podcast. What do you got? Thursday. Nick's right. Thursday. I'm sorry. It's going to be Thursday that we come at you with another podcast. We're going to talk all about the Monarchs, and we'll get you all ready and set up for this upcoming weekend. But for Nick Brown behind the scenes, for Carter Hill, for David Cunningham, for Andy Bitter, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long, and we'll see you on Thursday.